Hello everyone, this is Ty Williams here. I just have a interesting thoughts about AEW is represent the liberal side of wrestling and WWE represent the conservative side of wrestling as well. And the reason I thought about this is because I noticed throughout all my wrestling experience with wrestling fans and what I see in wrestling the past, so how many years? I would say like 30 years in my life. And I noticed there is a shift and a change in wrestling. And people think that wrestling is more of a competition sport. It is, but now it's starting to change. The idea of wrestling can be diverse, can be optional. Like you could watch different types of wrestling shows and different types of choosing in wrestling. Like people could watch AEW, WWE, NXT, NXT UK, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Stardom, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, MLW. Like it's very diverse and it has so many options. But the main two is WWE and AEW. AEW have a very open range when it comes to being more liberal in their wrestling circus or the wrestling world, of having more a new age of wrestling. Like people who love the flippy wrestling matches and who adore the flippy wrestling matches and just love the new style of wrestling in AEW. Then you go to WWE. WWE is more old school. They do not do flippy matches. They do more of old school wrestling matches. Like matches that the older wrestling fans love. And it's funny to me that like WWE fans watch AEW but complain about flippy wrestling matches and they still a WWE fan. And I feel like in their head, if they said, I don't like flippy stuff, but why you watch AEW? And you still a WWE fan. You get what I'm coming from. It's like saying, for instance, I don't like watching things that I don't like. Why criticize? And I feel WWE fans are like trying to change AEW to be like WWE. That doesn't work that way. Same thing as AEW fan criticize WWE about WWE is so boring, it's not entertaining, it's racist, and they always bring down the black man in their company, a black wrestler in their company. They are not being open-minded. What you expect? WWE is all about being more conservative on their view. Like I said before, older white men, and the majority mostly is white WWE fans watch wrestling. And yes, they are racist, but also they ignorant about other races and other LGBT outlooks. And I found that people is so complex when it comes to what is good in wrestling, what is bad in wrestling, and they don't see there is a huge divide in wrestling. Like I said before, you got AEW who represent the liberal aspect, and you got WWE represent the conservative aspect. And I always told a friend of mine this. I told her, I like, look, I told her, I think it was when we had lunch together. I said, wrestling is not what it used to be in the past. It's not. It's not the Attitude Era no more. It's not what we used to grow up as wrestling fans. It's more of everything is changing. Everything is moving. And there are people who living in the past instead of living in the moment, living right now. And I'm living in the moment right now. I see what is going on in wrestling nowadays. Like I said before, WWE is all about the conservative views, and AEW is all about the liberal views. And people think that WWE and AEW is having this competition, but in reality, there is no competition. There is more diverse and new things in wrestling. Lots of options. All the wrestlers are winners. All the wrestlers could go to any wrestling company. And even some wrestler is making their wrestling company. Like even if Vince McMahon decided to fire Sasha Banks, Bailey, Sasha Banks doesn't have to stay in WWE. She could go to any wrestling company. See fit for her and also make her happy. Like Sasha Banks could go to Stardom in Japan and just be a star there and build her legacy up in Stardom. And that's another thing what gets me about these wrestling fans. Wrestling fans think that women wrestlers have a limit in their career. No, they don't. If a woman wrestler want to retire however they please, that's fine. But don't generalize all women wrestlers should be, how to put this? I feel that wrestling fans think that women wrestlers should retire and never return to wrestling. And I talk to a lot of people, especially men's too, in the wrestling community as well. They have this old school mentality that women should not do like the men do when it comes to wrestling business and wrestling. And I don't like that at all. I feel like all women are different. Same thing as the men. All men is different as well. And I think that's what I'm trying to say in this video. Like, people does have a conservative view on women's wrestling, and there are people who got a liberal view on women's wrestling as well. And same thing as the conservative. And I feel like the ones who have conservative views like I'm not gonna say this person's name, but I do listen to him, and he is keeping it real with Konnan. Um, he have a very conservative view. His name is start with a letter D. You know him, but he's very conservative. But I'm not really upset what he says because that's his view when it comes to women wrestling and wrestling in general. Same thing as Jim Cornette. And Jim Cornette, he's a liberal. We all know that. But he had very conservative views in wrestling. And I want people to understand that there are different point of view when it comes to direction in wrestling. And I feel that people need to separate it and to understand both sides. Like for me, people judge me of the videos I did in the past. And when I look back on it, certain things that I said was like, oh, I'm right. And certain things like, I shouldn't say that, but that's made me being transparent. That made me being more human and more understanding on certain aspects in wrestling. And so when I think about the comparison between AEW and WWE, it got me thinking about this topic about pro wrestling is politics, and that's another thing too. I feel like wrestling nowadays is more politic driven, you know what I mean? And I feel like politics and wrestling doesn't mess well, but it's politics in wrestling. And I feel like politics run everywhere and every day. And people do not realize there are people who play politics and there are people who don't fuck with politics. And I'm a type of person that I have this complexity when it comes to politics because I feel like politics is more of what is best for humanity, what is best for us to be people. And I always sit back and think like, do politics help humanity, or it's just a way of trying to control the masses? Same thing as religious too. Religion and politics don't mix either because both of them have different ways of controlling the masses. And I feel that in religion and politics, it it plays a huge role in humanity. I know that I'm going over the place, but I feel like wrestling is is more focused on politics and their viewership as well because I feel like AEW is more of the liberal aspect of what wrestling's supposed to be, and WWE is more of the conservative. And you know what's funny about it too? You got these conservatives, these so-called conservatives, claiming that they are conservative, but they are more of closet liberals. And the same thing as liberals too. You got these liberals who are so-called claiming they liberals, but they actually closet conservatives. So it's like the politics is very complex to me because people claiming that what they are, but in reality they not. That's why you got to pay attention to people reaction, their body language, their tone, and how they say it, and their actions as well. Because people who meant what they are, they don't hide. They don't show off. Like you know it, you sense it, and you feel it. When, like, for instance, there are people who all about that life. You heard that phrase? All about that life. A person who all about that life, they don't pretend. They don't act. They show you what they all about. And I like that because people need to understand that there are people who all about that life, and there are people who pretend they all about that life and trying to fit in. And I feel that's why in wrestling nowadays, everybody trying to find their voice, trying to find who they are, what they all about, how to become the person they want to be now. And there are others want to fit in because they want to be accepted and be a part. And that's the problem in wrestling. Wrestling need their own identity about who they are. Because I feel that AEW and WWE and other wrestling companies are very afraid of the cancer culture, or very afraid of the sponsors as well. Because I feel like the cancel culture on Twitter and the sponsors are scaring the wrestling business and the wrestlers. Like, for instance, Mick Foley. I love Mick Foley. When Mick Foley was keeping it real, right? He said that WWE do not know how to take care of their wrestlers. He stepped up, and that was very brave of him. He's the only wrestling legend who speak up against WWE, how WWE treat their wrestlers not right, even their talents. And then you have AEW throwing shots at WWE, saying WWE is an evil, corrupt company. But however, you got WWE in your mouth, AEW wrestlers, about WWE this, WWE that. Don't focus on WWE. Focus on yourself and make a better wrestling representative. Because if I was a wrestler and WWE treat me like shit, I must admit that they treat me like shit and move on and make a better version of yourself in somewhere else. And that's what I'm trying to say about this whole wrestling politics thing, because I feel that wrestling nowadays is just a shady business, but also a very complex business, and even a rewarding business. It's all about being honest, all about being true, and trust to believe. When you honest and true, you see people true colors. And people have to learn that. And people who see someone true colors and they're not all about that life, you got to let them be. They are not a part of your journey. Because, like I said in other videos, there are people come in your life for a reason, for a season, that make you who you are. Be with a person with a reason, not with a season. So, I know this video is too long, so I gotta go. This is Ty Williams. Good day and goodbye.